We are halfway through the NFL season through 2021, but it is still time to find some Dynasty observations each and every single week. So I've pulled 3 Dynasty observations from week 8 to talk about in this video. So let's get right into it. So like I said, I have 3 Dynasty observations that I have found from this past week of football. I just decided to punt the 4th one, punt on 4th down. We're just going to talk about 3 big ones here so we can get set right into 1st down and talk about this first one here, because Darrell Henderson, in my opinion, is going to be a major league winner for fantasy football in both redraft and Dynasty. He's already been great for fantasy managers through half the season. He's the current RB10, averaging 17.5 fantasy points per game. He is on pace for 1,600 total yards and 15 total touchdowns. He's the clear-cut RB1 on the LA Rams team. Sonny Michel has never really been a problem for Darrell Henderson, and he is on one of the best offenses in the league with no signs of slowing down. But what is even better for Darrell Henderson is the rest of season schedule that the LA Rams have. I mean, they play the Tennessee Titans, who have given up 2 RB1 weeks so far to Jonathan Taylor and James Robinson. The San Francisco 49ers, who have given up 3 RB1 weeks to, again, Jonathan Taylor and both Detroit Lions running backs, plus 2 top 18 weeks to Aaron Jones and Alex Collins. Green Bay Packers, who've been run on basically all year long. The Jacksonville Jaguars, worst team in the league, one of the worst teams in the league. The Arizona Cardinals, who he already had a top 15 performance against earlier in the year. The Seattle Seahawks, who are currently the 3rd worst team against running backs. The Minnesota Vikings, decent but have been run on before. And the Baltimore Ravens, who, while they haven't given up much in yards, they have been beat in receptions, receiving yards, and in just overall scoring touchdowns to opposing running backs. So he has a very fantastic and soft schedule for the remainder of the year, and he could be and continue to be on a tear for the rest of 2021. And for those of you who traded for him in Dynasty, even paying a first for him back in August whenever Cam Akers went down, congratulations, because you probably are on your way to a very solid win, or at least a solid showing in your Dynasty leagues throughout the remainder of the year. And then the next conversation that we'll have to have about him is actually about his longevity, because there is a real possibility that he is the RB1 for the Rams next year, even when Cam Akers returns. That's a whole different conversation. But as of right now, Darrell Henderson looks like he is well on his way to being on a lot of fantasy championships at the end of this year. So moving on into 2nd down, on the other side of the Dynasty running back spectrum, we have the shell of Antonio Gibson. And honestly, that's not even really fair of me to say the shell of Antonio Gibson, because he was actually pretty good to start the year. He had 4 top 24 weeks over the first 5 weeks of the season. But overall, he's been a lot closer to Zach Moss than he has been Aaron Jones, which was far from the expectations that we had for Antonio Gibson coming into the year. And while I will say that I was not on board with a Gibson breakout this year, mainly because of J.D. McKissick and Gibson's lack of receiving work overall, Dynasty managers are starting to panic right now. And I don't know if this is an opportunity to buy him, or if we are seeing the start of a Josh Jacobs 2.0 valuation for Antonio Gibson. But if it is time to buy him, his price is actually pretty cheap right now compared to what it was a couple months ago before the season actually started, going recently for a 1 quarterback 2023 first, Devontae Booker, Khalil Herbert, and Tyler Conklin, and even Robert Woods and a 2022 second. So those are great prices for a running back that will still probably be valued as a top 15 running back at the end of the year throughout the remainder of the 2022 offseason, and with a lot of Dynasty upside and potential still as a 23-year-old running back entering his 3rd year next year. On the other hand, though, this could be Josh Jacobs 2.0 in that we just know what he is. We know that he is a touchdown-dependent running back who is never going to get the receiving work that he deserves or that we want from him. And all of that makes him undesirable in Dynasty leagues, because in all actuality, he doesn't really have a ceiling. And trust me, the market on Josh Jacobs right now is not even a thing. It's not there.
It's all a fugazi. You know what a fugazi is?
Oh, fugazi. It's fake.
Yeah, fugazi. It's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust. It doesn't exist. It's never landed. It is no matter. It's not on the elemental chart.
And I'm scared that Antonio Gibson, if he continues down the path that he is going in his game logs, in his fantasy and weekly performances, that is how we could actually be valuing Antonio Gibson moving forward, which is really scary to me. So ultimately, you have to decide for yourself what you believe in and how to approach Antonio Gibson, because if you still have faith in him, then you can go out there and buy low on him based on recent trades from the DLF Trade Finder. But if you don't believe in him, or maybe you are concerned like me, maybe you just steer away from Antonio Gibson, maybe try to hit the reset button on a 2022 running back, or maybe even a 2023 running back. Or if you are trying to trade for one right now on the cheap, maybe go and get a different running back than Antonio Gibson. So then finally we get into third down. A reminder, I said that I'm just punting the fourth down here, punting on a final observation, because this is a conversation that I want to have now, but especially because of a tweet that I posted on Sunday, mostly in jest, but out of some victory lapping, and naturally gained a lot of attention on Twitter. And Trey Sermon truthers are still out there to get me, and that's okay, because I will be victory lapping Trey Sermon as long as I possibly can. But what I wanted to use this tweet for in this video was more of a teaching moment and give some advice here on some things that I learned myself a few years ago and still try to remind myself every single year. And I wish I had some great philosophical quote here, but I don't. So here it goes. It's basically, it's okay to go against consensus. It's okay to value players differently than how the consensus views them. Nobody truly honestly knows what is going to go on every single year in the fantasy season or during the off season. Injuries can pop up. You know, Calvin Ridley, he can step away from the game of football. Coaches can be coaches and do their things and not give players opportunity or snaps or whatever. There's just all this uncertainty in the NFL that we truly don't really know what is going to happen. So it is okay to go against consensus and go against, you know, just the normal grain with player values. And in this instance, I did that with Michael Carter, and I valued Michael Carter over Trey Sermon the entire offseason and draft process. I valued him more before the draft, more after the draft. And honestly, that was really against consensus because there were a lot of people that were really on Trey Sermon for a number of reasons, including higher draft capital, a run first and better overall offense, the Niners versus the Jets, just a better offense in general. But that offense has shown that they can make any good running back, or just any running back in general, good for fantasy. And then also there was the argument that he was just a better overall prospect as well. And I didn't honestly see any of that or agree on any of that overall during the entire offseason and draft process. I mean, sure, he had higher draft capital. I can't argue with that one. He was picked before Michael Carter in the NFL draft. So yes, he had higher draft capital. And everybody just really loved to emphasize the fact that Trey Sermon was a day 2 pick and Michael Carter was a day 3 pick. And like there was any difference there whatsoever, because honestly, in actuality, they were only separated by 19 actual draft picks. And a lot of that was because of compensatory picks at the end of the 3rd round. But that difference was basically the same difference from Elijah Moore to Rondale Moore, and they were both drafted in the same round. So there really wasn't that much overall difference from Trey Sermon as a late 3rd round pick versus Michael Carter as an early 4th round pick. And especially once you get past round 2, honestly, nothing really even matters anymore, because sure, there are round 3 hits like Alvin Kamara and David Montgomery, but there's also Darrington Evans, Royce Freeman, Keyshawn Vaughn. Like, basically the predictiveness for success after rounds 1 and 2 for any position, but especially running backs as well, it just drops exponentially, and we really have no idea what can go on and what is going to happen for these running backs drafted from round 3 on. I mean, look at Khalil Herbert right now, drafted in the 6th round. Elijah Mitchell drafted in the 5th or 6th round as well, have been fantastic and outstanding, and one of the 2 best rookie running backs on the season so far. But because they were drafted in rounds 5 through 6, we didn't really care about them all too much. But in actuality, their predictiveness and their probability for success was not all that much different than Trey Sermon and Michael Carter, just because they were all drafted after in round 3 or later. And then there was also the argument that he is on a better run first team, and better, absolutely. I mean, it's the San Francisco 49ers versus the New York Jets. I can't really argue that one either. And that was one of also the biggest arguments that I used in favor of Elijah Mitchell, was the fact that the San Francisco 49ers were very run first. Any running back they can throw out there is going to be good for fantasy football. I use that a lot for Elijah Mitchell. But my problem with Trey Sermon versus Michael Carter was that I saw Trey Sermon as the 4th best running back on the San Francisco 49ers team. I saw him as a worse running back than Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, and then also Elijah Mitchell as well. So I saw him as, at best, the RB4 on that team. However, for Michael Carter, I saw him as the best running back on his team on the New York Jets. All he had to do was beat Tevin Coleman, Ty Johnson, and LaMichael Pirine.
Easy peasy lemon squeezy.
So I say all this just in hindsight to show my process for why I had Michael Carter over Trey Sermon in the pre-draft and post-draft process all offseason. And to me, it seemed pretty legit. And given how their seasons are going, it seems like I was pretty right on both of those. So if you find yourself going against consensus, but with reasons and a process that you can rely on and seems legit or is legit, stay true to those values, because you can be just as right or just as wrong as consensus, because honestly, we can't really know what actually happens until it actually happens. So that is the final rant that I had to say there on third down. And I know it went a little bit longer, so that's why I punted on fourth down. But if you would like to see more Dynasty observations and more of a recap from week 8, you can click right up here and watch that video. With that all being said, guys, thank you all so much for watching. We'll catch y'all later.